Without further ado, we'll kick off with our first presentation from Shawn Nowicki on sea lamprey management and control, and we'll get the latest on this important invasive species priority.
All right, so thank you for the introduction. I am Shawn Nowicki. I'm with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Sea Lamprey Control Program out of Marquette, Michigan. And I'm going to talk to you about sea lamprey control in lakes Huron and Michigan. So some of you out there may not know what a sea lamprey is. The scientific name for sea lamprey is Petromyzon marinus. It means stone sucker of the sea. It's an ancient dinosaur-type fish that has remained mostly unchanged for about 340 million years and survived 4 extinction events. It's native to the Atlantic Ocean. It's eel-like in appearance, but it's not an eel. It's anadromous, means it migrates up freshwater rivers from the sea to spawn. It's semiparous, reproduces only once in a lifetime, and it's highly fecund. Each female can lay up to 100,000 eggs. They're an invasive predatory parasite in the Great Lakes. Sea lampreys use their large oral sucking disc filled with sharp teeth that surround a rasping tongue to securely attach to a fish and continuously feed on its blood and body fluids. In the Great Lakes, a single sea lamprey can kill up to 40 pounds of fish. Fish that do not die from the initial attack often die from a secondary infection at the wound site. Sea lampreys prefer cold water and large-bodied hosts like lake trout, whitefish, salmon, and burbot, but they'll also feed on walleye, northern pike, and even lake sturgeon. As I said, sea lampreys are native to the Atlantic Ocean, but they are invasive in the Great Lakes. They were first observed in Lake Ontario as early as 1835. But Niagara Falls served as a natural barrier, confining sea lampreys to Lake Ontario until the early 1900s, when improvements to the Welland Canal were made. The Welland Canal bypasses Niagara Falls and provides a shipping connection between Lakes Ontario and Erie, and this allowed sea lampreys to freely access the rest of the Great Lakes. And by the late 1930s, the invasion was complete. After sea lampreys invaded all of the Great Lakes, the impact was profound. The once thriving commercial fishery was gone, and lake trout were largely extirpated in much of the lakes. As you can see in the graph there on the right, lake trout harvest in the Great Lakes decreased by 98%, from 15 million pounds annually to about 300,000 pounds annually. Prior to control, sea lamprey estimated to have killed more than 100 million pounds of Great Lakes fish annually, which is equal to about 5 times the commercial harvest. In response to the invasion of sea lamprey and other fisheries-related challenges across multiple governing jurisdictions, the Great Lakes Fishery Commission was formed. The threat of sea lampreys was a catalyst to forming the commission following the 1954 Convention on Great Lakes Fisheries. The commission is a binational effort between the United States and Canada, and its major duties include coordinating fishery research and facilitating cooperative fishery management by working collaboratively with governments to protect and improve the fishery. But the primary responsibility of the commission is to control sea lamprey in order to maintain the diversity of native fish and their populations in the Great Lakes. So the Sea Lamprey Control Program consists of multiple agencies. The Great Lakes Fishery Commission is located in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and the Sea Lamprey Control agents are with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in Ludington and Marquette, Michigan, and the Department of Fisheries and Oceans Canada in Sault Ste. Marie, Canada. There are 2 USGS stations that provide research assistance for sea lamprey control: the Hammond Bay Biological Station, located near Rogers City, Michigan, and the Upper Midwest Environmental Science Center, located near La Crosse, Wisconsin. The program has existed, developed, and grown since the 1950s. So before you can control an organism, you need to know its life cycle. So with sea lampreys, the spawning adults ascend streams in the spring between March and July. They build nests, and they move stones by sucking them up and then moving them into a horseshoe-shaped nest, and then they spawn. After they spawn, they die, and the eggs hatch a short while later, and the young larvae leave the nest. They drift downstream and settle in the soft substrate. Here they live harmless, blind and filter feeders for a period of about 3 to 5 years, sometimes longer. After that time, when they reach about 6 inches in size, they undergo a metamorphosis, usually in the fall, but can begin late summer and continue to early the next spring. And that's when they turn into the parasite. They develop the eyes and the sucker-like mouth. They then leave the stream during a period of high water, and they'll feed for up to 18 months in the lake, killing about 40 pounds of fish. When they return to a stream to spawn, this is usually in the spring, and they do not home to their natal stream. So the sea lamprey control program is divided into program areas focusing on the life stages to target, and they can be divided into adult and larval control. Under adult control, adult sea lamprey populations are assessed by capturing adult lampreys in rivers in traps during their spawning run, conducting mark recapture estimates to develop population estimates. And then these estimates are then, they provide the data as a type of report card for program success. I'll speak a little bit about that. So here are the graphs of the 3-year moving average of adult sea lamprey abundance over time, with Lake Michigan on the left and Lake Huron on the right. Prior to control, adult sea lamprey abundance was around 600,000 in Lake Michigan, that's circled in red, and 700,000 in Lake Huron. The black horizontal line shows the target number of adult lampreys that we strive for, and that they're low enough numbers for fish community objectives for each of the lakes to be achievable. In Lake Michigan, the adult numbers are below target and have been mostly below target for over 10 years. The 2023 adult index estimate was 24,000, which is below the target of 35,000. In Lake Huron, the numbers have been above target, but they're remaining steady and are near to target with the 2023 adult index estimate at 34,000. Lake trout marking rates are also another measure of program success. These data are not collected by sea lamprey control agents, but are collected during standardized assessments by fishery agencies. There are targets set for lake trout marking rates. The number of fresh A1 to A3 marks per 100 lake trout are plotted here as a 3-year moving average. That's the green line. The target for both lakes is 5 marks per 100 large lake trout. Lake Michigan marking rates were below target in 2023 and have remained below target for nearly 10 years. Lake Huron marking rate is just above target at 5.2 marks per 100 lake trout. The marking rate has remained steady, hovering around the target in recent years for Lake Huron. All right, so getting back to adult control. The traps I talked about earlier for adult assessment are usually placed at barrier locations. Barriers limit the upstream migration and reduce treatment area or the number of stream miles required for treatment. They are either purposely built to block lampreys or were built for other purposes like hydropower, but are useful in blocking sea lamprey migration. There are sensitive issues relating to stream connectivity, and we work collaboratively with our partners in balancing the benefits of connectivity by removing barriers with the cost of invasive species, potential for increased distribution and abundance. Habitat above barriers may also serve as a refuge for endangered or threatened aquatic species. Overall, we wouldn't have effective sea lamprey control without barriers. There would just be way too many streams to treat with the lampricide, which I'll talk about soon, and not enough time or chemicals to do as good of a job. So here's a map of the barriers that are identified as blocking sea lamprey barriers in the Great Lakes. In Lake Michigan, there are 15 sea lamprey barriers, 6 are purpose-built. And in Lake Huron, there are 17 sea lamprey barriers, 13 are purpose-built. The The larval portion of the life cycle was determined to be a very vulnerable life stage to be exploited, and the best option for controlling sea lampreys, since they're in the streams, they're able to be found, counted, and killed prior to becoming parasitic. Larval control is made up of larval assessment, which direct and evaluate control efforts, and also the lampricide control teams. The larval assessment program area of sea lamprey control determines the presence, the distribution, the size, structure, and abundance of sea lamprey larvae to direct where and when control is needed. A large portion of survey work is done with backpack electrofishing gear. Non-wadable areas that include deep portions of rivers and off mouths of rivers in the Great Lakes are surveyed with deep water tools. These tools include surveying with the lampricide granular balicide, which is a lampricide wrapped on a sand granule. It sinks to the bottom, agitates the lampreys up, and they get them up out of their burrows, where they can then be collected and counted. The deep water electrofishing boat is also used in deep water and is used in the St. Mary's River to determine the larval population estimate there annually. Streams are selected for treatment based on data collected from surveys the year prior to treatment. Larval assessment crews estimate larval populations and identify distribution limits in sea lamprey infested streams. Streams are ranked against all other infested Great Lakes tributaries on a cost per kill measure. Streams that have the highest numbers of large larvae and are cost effective are usually ranked higher on the list. Funding and personnel are available to treat over 100 heavily infested streams each year. Some streams known to be consistent producers are treated every 3 to 5 years. Here's a map of the streams selected for treatment this year using data collected by the larval assessment teams. This year, there are 118 streams planned for treatment. In Lake Michigan, there are plans to treat 27 streams and 4 lentic areas. And in Lake Huron, there are plans to treat 32 streams, 3 lentic areas, and over 300 hectares of the St. Mary's River. The application of selective lampricides that target sea lamprey larvae in streams and lentic areas continues to be the primary control method of the sea lamprey control program. There are 2 lampricides used in the lampricide control program. They are TFM and balicide. They were identified in the late 1950s to the early 1960s, and they are applied at a dose that can kill lampreys with little effect on most other aquatic organisms. Most other fish are able to metabolize lampricides readily compared to the lamprey. Lampricides break down within days and do not bioaccumulate. To save time, I won't go into all the details of planning and executing lampricide treatment, but I do want to make you aware that numerous data is collected prior to and during a treatment. Water discharge measurements, water chemistry data, and flow studies are all used to plan the treatment. On large systems, these data are entered into a computer model that has previous treatment data that's used to predict flow time and lampricide concentration as the bank of chemical moves downstream. Lampricide is metered into the stream in 12-hour blocks to achieve at least 9 hours of minimum lethal concentration, which we call MLC, to kill sea lamprey larvae. The lampricide block moves downstream and may require additional applications in order to maintain this minimum lethal concentration. This slide shows the lampricide, different types of lampricide application in different environments. One's a larger river, one's a very small tributary. And then analysis can occur on the back of a tailgate with a lot of analytic equipment there, little spectrophotometers. And then we also have portable labs that go out into the field. So this map on the left highlights all the streams treated by control agents from the US and Canada in 1 year. You can see what a massive effort it is, which is why the Lamprey control arm of the program accounts for most of the program's spending. You also see a spaghetti pile of dead larvae. Looks like a transformer in there too, after a treatment. There are, however, a few risks associated with TFM and niclosamide. They are, after all, registered pesticides. There are 2 of only 4 in the United States. And with that designation comes some inherent risk. The good news is lampricides do not bioaccumulate in natural aquatic environments, but instead degrade by exposure to sunlight and bacterial action and begin breaking down shortly after being applied. Also, research has shown that lampricides have not exhibited any carcinogenic or mutagenic properties and do not pose a risk to human health or to the environment. The primary risk associated with the use of lampricides is non-target aquatic mortality. Mud puppies, a few fish species, and fish stressed by spawning or disease can be negatively affected during treatments. Evidence also suggests that in high alkalinity streams, lampricides may demonstrate increased risk to fish such as young sturgeon, log perch, and stonecat that cannot readily metabolize TFM. In addition, certain types of aquatic insects may also be susceptible to lampricides, but studies have shown that these communities quickly rebound after treatments are completed. The Commission, its partner agencies, and the control agents take the risk of non-target mortality very seriously. So the risk management team addresses environmental and non-target issues related to the implementation of the sea lamprey control program in the United States and Canada. This involves coordination with many federal, provincial, state, and tribal agencies and working with others to minimize risk to non-target organisms. Tests to determine the toxicity of TFM to log perch were successfully conducted streamside in a portable trailer on the Coldwater River last year. Log perch are the primary host fish of the federally endangered snuff box mussel. Results were more favorable than previous studies that were conducted in the laboratory, and population effects are not expected. Also last year, the risk management team participated in the partner-led Save Our Sturgeon effort in conjunction with staff from the Fish and Wildlife Service Green Bay office, Michigan DNR, and Little River Band of Ottawa Indians to collect young of the year lake sturgeon before, during, and after the treatment of the Manistee River. Live fish were removed from the river and held in lampricide-free Manistee River water. All fish were weighed, measured for length, fin clipped for genetics, pit tagged, and returned to capture sites in the river following the treatment. The risk management team also assisted with TFM toxicity tests on larval and juvenile life stages of the hickory nut and round hickory nut mussels. Results indicated that TFM is not acutely toxic to either species at concentrations applied during treatment. So I told you about our 2 primary control methods, adult control by the use of barriers and larval control by the use of lampricides. Supplemental controls are tactics that supplement these 2 primary sea lamprey control strategies by reducing reproduction and capturing transformed sea lamprey. The SubCon initiative began in 2020 and is a long-term study to evaluate supplemental controls on 13 streams. The supplemental controls were deployed in 4 Lake Huron streams during the last few years, and there are 2 Lake Michigan streams that are being investigated for SubCon this year. So supplemental controls include pheromones and antagonists, electrical guidance, sterile male release, new trap designs, and juvenile trapping. Results so far include redirecting around $450,000 of control effort, decreased treatment frequency, and a decrease in juvenile production. Here are the adult abundance graphs I showed earlier with the control effort overlaid. You can see that increased control effort has contributed to the decline in adult sea lamprey numbers in both lakes, Michigan and Huron. Sea lampreys are resilient and control must be ongoing or sea lamprey numbers will rebound. So why do we care? For a number of reasons. The Great Lakes Fishery supports over 75,000 jobs, and 5 million people fish the Great Lakes annually. Commercial fishing is the backbone of many of our Great Lakes communities. Subsistence fishing is a right of tribal communities and legal obligation of federal trust responsibility. And we'd all like to see a balanced ecosystem. So the Sea Lamprey Control Program faces many challenges. The first one, maintaining our social license. Much of our work that we do is on private land. So without the support of landowners, we are unable to effectively do our jobs. We're faced with a quandary of success. Older generations are very knowledgeable about sea lampreys and they remember how bad it really was. Younger generations are less familiar. So we have an emphasis on outreach and education. There's always the threat of other invasives. The sea lamprey has been the big bad one for decades, but a new, different invasive in the Great Lakes could lead to a need to divert resources from Sea Lamprey Control Program. Shifting baselines, either from internal Sea Lamprey Control Program decisions or larger fishery management or cultural perspectives. The potential of chemical resistance. Recently, we just held a lampricide resistance workshop that brought together researchers and sea lamprey control agents to discuss the more recent research that has come out, as well as the potential to monitor for resistance in the future. And climate change, looking at the potential there for increased water temperature, decreased water levels, and how that may affect sea lamprey control. Looking forward, sea lamprey control has been around for 7 decades with changes in technology constantly occurring. We're looking for new ways to adapt and improve our control techniques. One example is the potential use of eDNA for larval assessment. There's been a couple of projects to date, and one is going to occur this year as well. There's some potential uses for eDNA to look at larval distribution, detections, and upstream of barriers. And of course, SubCon, that's the long-term study. As previously mentioned, we're looking forward to some results from the SubCon strategies this year.